Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. It's that time of day where we take a moment and pause and say thanks to everyone who's making the world run. Let's start with the men and women in the military, police officers, firefighters, doctors, nurses, lab technicians, hospital orderlies, small business owners, restaurateurs, truck drivers, everyone working at the grocery stores and fast food joints, the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Oakland, and Union Station, the pilots and flight attendants. Let's listen to the national anthem. And a very happy Tuesday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang has the week off. He'll be back with us on Monday. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Well, the breaking news today is that a prospective map that Gavin Newsom will put on the ballot this November, if he gets his way, would eliminate not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Republican congressional districts in the state of California in what would be arguably the most aggressive Democratic gerrymander in the history of the state. If Newsom gets his way, Doug LaMalfa, who currently represents a Trump plus 25 seat in Northern California, he's a goner. Kevin Kiley, who is a regular on this program and will be joining us next week in a Trump plus 3 district, he would also be eliminated. So would David Valadao in the Central Valley in a Trump plus 6 district, Ken Calvert out in the Inland Empire in a Trump plus 6 district, and Darrell Issa in San Diego County in a Trump plus 15 district. They would also shore up vulnerable Democrats like Derek Tran, Dave Min, and Adam Gray in the Central Valley. If Newsom gets his way, that would net the Democrats 5 more seats in the House of Representatives and would make up what they're about to lose in Texas. Now, if you draw up this map, what you're doing is you're taking Democrats out of seats that are currently represented by Democrats, and you're putting them in seats that are currently represented by Republicans so that you make those seats more competitive or you make them lopsided Democratic districts. Obviously, the goal here is to maximize the number of Democratic seats in the state of California, and this is about as much as you can get. All the juice from the squeeze. The reality of the situation, or I guess I should say the consequences of the situation for those of you who live here, is this. If you think you get awful government now, you just wait until they put you in a congressional district that's shaped like a snake. Because that's what's going to happen. Right now, what we have, or I guess we don't really have it right now because we have some variation of a Democratic gerrymander, but what you're supposed to have is you're supposed to have communities of interest in a congressional district. Well, let's say you live in the South Bay. If you live in Hermosa Beach, the theory is if you live in Hermosa Beach, you have a lot in common with people who live in Redondo Beach and people who live in Manhattan Beach and people who live in Torrance and Palos Verdes and El Segundo. But you don't really have a lot in common with people who live in Pasadena because people who live in Pasadena have different needs. They deal with different issues. They need different government services. So if you were to dump Hermosa Beach in a congressional district where the population center is Pasadena, what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with Hermosa Beach being completely ignored by the member of Congress. So let's say you have a problem with Social Security. They're sending you the wrong amount of money. Let's say you have a problem with the VA. You're a veteran and you're supposed to be entitled to certain services and they're not giving them to you because there's a paperwork snafu. Or you own a business and the EPA is causing you problems and you need someone to go to bat for you. Right now, if you have a member who is representing communities of interest, you probably have an office that's not far from where you live. You probably have people who work for that member of Congress that's not far from where you live. You have the ability to get them on the phone. They're going to pay attention to you because they don't want you going to your city councilman or you going to some other elected official and saying, Congressman so-and-so isn't being responsive to me. So odds are you get at least a return phone call. You may not get the result that you're looking for, but you get some acknowledgement that you're alive and you matter. The moment you put people in districts that are shaped like snakes, if you're in an area that's in a remote part of that district that's not the population center, they're going to ignore you. There's no motivation for them to respond to your phone calls and to deal with your problem because they know they're never going to lose re-election. They're in a safe Democratic seat. You are nowhere near them, and you're in an area that doesn't produce enough votes to matter anyway. So it's just easier for them to placate you, ignore you, pretend like you don't exist. That's what's going to happen here. And if you have longtime members of Congress who have been around a while and they're committee chairman or subcommittee chairman, I think Ken Calvert is the subcommittee chairman of appropriations for defense. So he's a guy who's in control of lots of budgets that deal with the defense industry. We're going to lose that. And you're going to get some state legislator who is going to be elected on the platform of voting the party line. And that's the goal, and that will likely be the result. In California, because we're a one-party state nationally, not nationally, but statewide, we get awful government services. That's the reason why there was no water in the fire hydrants. That's the reason why the bullet train is a disaster. They say it's a success and no one questions them. This is the reason that they could care less about fixing the insurance crisis. They don't think they're going to lose re-election, so why bother even pretending? Why bother pretending that they care? Just change the conversation to we hate Trump, and that's good enough for the people who live here. And for whatever reason, the people who live here are extremely tolerant of bad government. As long as you're ideologically on the same page as them, whether or not you deliver the services that you promise to deliver is not a relevant question. That's the way it works at the state level. That's the way it works at the local level. But now it's going to work that way at the federal level too. Right now, these members of Congress, and they have 1,000,001 different problems, but right now these members of Congress largely are responsive to the people in their districts. Particularly if you live in a district that's a purple district, that's one of these contested districts, if they don't pay attention to you, you're going to light them up on social media, and they don't want that. It's the one level of government that is still responsive to your needs. If they get this map, that's gone too. And we will be left with every single layer of government in California where competence and responsiveness and results are not regarded as relevant. And it's just, do you hate Donald Trump? Will you vote a straight Democratic Party line? And that is it. That is what they're promising. That is what they will deliver on. Don't expect anything else. And if you're someone who needs something from the government for whatever reason, you better be a donor. You better know someone who works in that office. You better have some kind of juice, or you're not going to have your problems taken care of. That's just how that works. Now, they're going to run into problems because the politics of the state of California are evolving, as it always does. People die, people are born, people turn 18, people move here. We know how that works. And in the last election, there was dramatic movement to the right among certain groups, particularly Latinos and Asians. We saw a bunch of Latinos, especially in agricultural areas like Imperial County and the Central Valley, move to the right. Same thing with Asians, who have had it up to here with the crime problem. the way they're going to draw these districts is assuming that all of those people are going to vote Democrat in perpetuity. So you can put them in districts where Democrats have an advantage and a Democratic candidate is supposed to win the seat. But just because you draw it up that way doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's going to vote. Frequently, they have these great ideas and then they get a result that they never anticipated, especially if you have to rob from Peter to pay Paul. You are going to spread yourself very, very, very thin if you're going to eliminate 5 Republican seats in the House of Representatives. There's just no other way to do it. And the state of California is hemorrhaging population. Hemorrhaging. We lost a seat during the last census, and had they taken the census 2 years later, after everyone got out of Dodge due to the COVID-19 shutdowns, we probably would have lost 3 seats, maybe more. In 2030, after already having lost a seat in 2020, we will probably lose between 3 and 5 seats, which means you're going to have to take all of these Democrats. If you have just 4 Republican sinks in the state, and a sink is where you put all the Republican voters that you can in 3 or 4 different places, so their votes are all concentrated in safe Republican seats, and none of those Republicans can vote to oust vulnerable incumbent Democrats. That's what the Democrats are going to try to do with this map. But if we lose 3 to 5 seats, they're going to have to draw 3 to 5 seats out. And if you have 3 or 4 Republican sinks, you're not going to be able to draw them out. You're going to have to draw your own people out, which means the food fight between the Democratic members of the delegation is going to start almost immediately, because they know when the music stops, 3 to 5 of them are going to be without a chair. And some of them are going to end up running against their neighbors, incumbent Democratic members of Congress in nearby districts. That is going to create complete chaos among that delegation. None of them are going to trust one another. They're all going to view one another as rivals. There's going to be no way to prevent them from fighting. The infighting is going to start almost immediately. The backstabbing, the leaking of negative stories, they're going to try to take one another out. The Hunger Games is not just a show on television. It's going to go on between all of these many longtime members of Congress. Now, if you're currently in a safe seat, or you're currently in a seat where you have a relatively good chance at winning re-election, why in the world would you want to give that up for a new map that's going to result in someone trying to kill you every 2 years and probably friendly fire trying to do it? You don't have to worry about losing to a Republican. You have to worry about losing to another Democrat. But if you're the incumbent member of Congress, does it really matter to you? Does it matter who beats you? Does it matter who replaces you? You like being a member of Congress. You have power. People call you congressman. You can go on these junkets all over the globe. Why in the world would you ever want to give that up? If you're trading a map that will net the Democrats 5 seats for, I guess it would be 2 cycles or 3 cycles, depending on when they get it done, and you're giving up all of your stability for a roll of the dice that you could be in the majority, that doesn't seem like a trade-off I would be interested in. They're all being pushed into it by Gavin Newsom, but they may regret it if they sign on. Because the first thing they have to do is get the people of California to approve it. Because we voted for the independent commission to draw the districts. So if suddenly you go back to the people and you say, here's the deal. We want you to draw up a map or approve a map that produces a lot of snakes, that's going to result in the Democrats potentially winning the majority, but maybe not, and you're going to receive awful government services, and you have to go back and repeal something you liked when you voted on it the last time, that may not necessarily result in Newsom getting what he wants. Can you imagine how embarrassing that would be for Newsom if he were to go to the people and ask for a vote and the people vote it down? And Arnold Schwarzenegger and others say that they're going to campaign vigorously against this. And according to public polling that I've seen so far, only 52% support it. Usually, if you take a measure on the ballot or put a measure on the ballot, you need 60 plus percent to ensure its passage. This thing is nowhere near that. $1 hasn't been spent attacking the idea and making the counter argument quite yet. But that'll happen, and a lot of money will be spent because there's a lot at stake. This is a very risky roll of the dice that Newsom is making here, and he's doing it because he thinks it will benefit him in a Democratic primary for president. He is trying to remake himself as a partisan warrior, and he thinks this will help him get there. What he's willing to sacrifice to get there is good government in California, or I guess I should say responsive government in California. He thinks you can live without that so that he will benefit in a Democratic Party primary. I'm not saying the thing will fail. I'm just saying, as of right now, this thing is a long way away from being able to pass. It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if you'd like to listen to the podcast edition of this program, all you have to do is subscribe on your handy-dandy iPhone. All of the editions of the program will be downloaded automatically to your phone so you can listen to us whenever and wherever you want, including airplanes, cruise ships, or on the exercise bike. Celebrate summer at Resorts World Las Vegas. Resorts World Las Vegas offers a 5.5-acre pool complex with 5 unique pool experiences and the largest elevated pool deck on the Las Vegas Strip. IU Day Club is a stunning oasis inspired by the islands of Southeast Asia. Right now, if you're caller number 9 at 888-790-5222, that's 888-790-5222, you'll win a Resorts World summer getaway, including a 2-night stay at Resorts World Las Vegas, 2 VIP passes to IU Day Club, and $175 in food and beverage credit. All of this provided by Resorts World Las Vegas, now offering no resort fees and complimentary parking. Good luck dialing. The John Phillips Show continues in moments. Don't you go anywhere. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. The Fix California Hour coming up after the news at 1. Fox 11's Alex Michelson joins us, so make sure you stick around for that. There's been a lot of debate going on recently as to who benefits the most from Kamala Harris announcing that she will not run for governor. In my opinion, the people benefit the most because we don't have to have her as governor. Could you imagine living through 8 years of that? Just the laughing for no reason constantly. Who laughs for no reason constantly besides serial killers? Who does that? How about the never answering a question? Now, Grampy Joe used to do that too, but he was a little bit different than her. He was out of it. So if Grampy Joe didn't answer a question, you kind of gave him a pass. Grampy Joe, climate change is a subject that is debated in all quarters of American society. What is your take on climate change? Answer, I'll have the chicken, thank you. And then you look at him for a minute and you realize, okay, it's Grampy Joe. He's not trying to dodge the question. He just has no clue what you asked him about. But Kamala Harris is a little different. Kamala Harris is just, I don't know, biologically incapable of answering a question. And it doesn't even involve just the trick questions or the complex questions. If you ask her something basic, she still won't give you an answer. Madam Vice President, you were once the Attorney General of California. How did you vote on Prop 36? I'll get back to you on that. Really? It's a subject, in theory, you should know backwards and forwards, but you'll get back to us on that because you don't have an answer for us as you're voting at the voting booth on that day. How does that make sense? I don't know, but that's her answer to all questions. Madam Vice President, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? Humana, 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 humana. No answer. If you're a candidate for office, I guess you can give them a little leeway because they don't want to be boxed in. Every time you answer a question, you upset some voter group. And so you want to answer as few questions as possible. Now, if you don't answer any questions, then no one knows what you stand for. And that was her problem. But imagine dealing with a governor like that who would never answer a question. We have raging fires going on all over the state. Are you going to declare a state of emergency? Well, the fires certainly are hot, aren't they? Next question. You can't have a chief executive of a state that does that. How about if you're in the legislature? Madam Governor, I have a bill. This bill would propose a water bond and put it on the ballot. Do you support it? Water is, in fact, wet. Next question. That's what we'd get 8 years of. I don't know if I could put up with that. But fortunately, we collectively dodged the bullet. Now the question becomes, who benefits the most? And I've seen many people weigh in and say that Katie Porter, of all people, benefits the most. I don't see how that happens. How does Katie Porter benefit from this? Katie Porter basically is supported by Democrats who hate the Democratic Party for one reason or another. She's got the disgruntled minivan mom vote. But that's not half the state. Thank God for that. That's not enough to put you in that office. You look at what people who have worked with her think of her, whether it be other members of Congress, people like Nancy Pelosi. They hate her guts. The people who work for her in Congress, they hate her guts. People who were Democratic members of Congress from neighboring districts, they hate her guts. She was so bitter after she lost to Adam Schiff in the primary for U.S. Senate, she alleged that it was a rigged election. You think for 1 minute the Democratic Party is going to get behind a candidate they all despise who allege that the state of California runs rigged elections? Not a chance. There are Democrats who are disgruntled. They think the Democratic Party isn't left-wing enough or isn't aggressive enough, and they want to light the party on fire. Those people will vote for her. I don't think that's a majority here. I think most Democrats in this state are partisans, and they want someone who is a partisan Democrat. While she is a partisan Democrat, that's not her brand. Her brand is, I want to burn everything down, including the party. And I want some kind of consumer-friendly, angry, left-wing ideology to run the state. And I don't think that's where the Democratic voters are. I really don't. Some will gravitate to her, not a majority. Antonio Villaraigosa looks like yesterday's news. Every time you see him on TV, he talks slower, sounds older, and the videos that he puts up look like they were taken from security camera footage from a 7-Eleven in 1994. In the home of Silicon Valley, I don't think that's going to sell either. He was Speaker of the California Assembly in the 1990s. I know for many of us that seems like yesterday, but trust me when I say that was many moons ago. After he was mayor of Los Angeles, we've had Eric Garcetti for a term and change, And we also have Karen Bass. It's been forever since he's been mayor of Los Angeles. I don't think Antonio Villaraigosa is top of mind for anyone. Javier Baccaria, that guy couldn't win a statewide election to save his life. I don't know if you remember this, but he ran for mayor of Los Angeles way back when. And that guy was an also-ran. That guy had zero constituency when he ran for mayor. Had he not been appointed to be attorney general by Jerry Brown, there would be 0% chance that he would have been able to win that office on his own. He's a paper tiger. He's going nowhere fast. Tony Atkins, Tony Thurmond, no one knows who they are. Not relevant. The people I do believe who benefit the most from Kamala Harris not being in the race is the Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, who is a member of one of the top 10 richest families in all of California. Her dad is a developer in Sacramento. He's the Eli Broad, the Kaufman Broad of Sacramento. That's where they made all of their money. This is a woman who could blow her nose with $100 bills and be fine. And if you look at her resume looks impressive. She was the ambassador to Hungary, and she was the lieutenant governor. To the layman, to a person who doesn't follow politics closely, that looks like someone who's impressive. What they don't know is those are both political patronage jobs that were purchased by her that are largely ceremonial and have no official duties. She is a blank slate. She is a white canvas, and she will be whatever she has to be when she puts her name on the ballot. In addition to being a blank slate, she also has the ability to do something that the other candidates do not. She has the ability to make it rain. If you're a Democratic member of Congress, if you're a Democratic member of the state legislature, if you are a candidate for office and she covets your endorsement, she will max out to you, and all her family members will max out to you, and they will do what they have to do to make sure that you have the financial resources that you need for your raise. She can make sure that the money spigot is turned on if you're on Team Eleni. Antonio Villaraigosa can't do anything similar to that for you. Neither can Katie Porter, neither can Javier Becerra, neither can the rest of them. The Democratic establishment is already getting behind Eleni Kounalakis. Hillary Clinton endorsed her, Barbara Boxer endorsed her, Nancy Pelosi endorsed her. I would imagine that the rest of them are going to fall in line. If you're a Democrat in California, an elected Democrat, and you think that the seat is safe and no Republican has a shot at winning it, and you have a choice of 10 different candidates, why wouldn't you get behind the candidate who can do something for you? All Antonio can do is promise you something if he gets elected. If I get elected, I'll appoint you to this. If I get elected, I'll hire your kids over there. If I get elected, I'll make sure that I raise money for you in your reelection campaign. All of it is contingent on him getting elected. Until he gets elected, he can't do anything for you. And at this point, he looks like a long shot. Why would you get behind a long shot who can't do anything for you if you could get behind someone who looks like a favorite who can also do something for you in terms of financial resources? So I think she benefits the most. The person who benefits the second most is Rick Caruso, because Rick Caruso also has the ability to make it rain. He's a billionaire. He can jump in the race a la Michael Bloomberg and start throwing money around the same way that Michael Bloomberg did. You could end up with a situation where you have two very rich people buying everyone in this state off, going nuclear on one another. At this point, I think that's the likely scenario. If you are one of the Republican candidates, whether it's Steve Hilton or Chad Bianco, you can't compete with that. If you're one of these mere mortal Democratic candidates, You can't compete with that either. The only person who could compete with that would be Kamala Harris, because she has almost universal name ID from being the vice president and the Democratic candidate for president. But you take her out of the mix, it's a bunch of people who you don't know or you used to know. And that creates an environment that is ripe for someone with a lot of money who can come in and who can buy name identification and buy everyone off. My guess is many of the Democratic electeds in this state are more than willing to be bought off. Antonio and Katie Porter have nothing to sell at this point. If you'd like to weigh in, give us a call at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Who do you think benefits the most from Kamala Harris taking a pass? I think it's Eleni. What say you? At 800-222-5222. It's the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. The Fix California Hour coming up after the news at 1. Fox 11's Alex Michelson joins us, so make sure you stick around for that. I want to make one more point about Rick Caruso, and that is this. All things being equal, if I had to put my money down right now, I would say that the November ballot, assuming he gets into the race, would be Eleni Kounalakis, the lieutenant governor, and Rick Caruso, the developer, both of whom are registered Democrats. The biggest threat to Rick Caruso and getting on the November ballot would be if Donald Trump made an endorsement in the primary. If Donald Trump gets behind one candidate, then I believe that is enough for that candidate to make it to the November ballot. Think about this. Even though Gavin Newsom is talking about gerrymandering up the state's congressional delegation, when you look at all the votes that were cast in the last election, Republican candidates for the House of Representatives in California generated 40% of all the votes, which means if you were to draw the maps fairly, 40% of them would be represented by Republicans, but that's never going to happen because we're not going to draw the maps fairly in California. That's not how that works. However, if you get 40% of the vote in a primary election for governor, that's probably enough for you to finish first place on that ballot. And right now, there are two Republican candidates on the ballot who are fighting over Republican votes and some decline to state votes. Steve Hilton, formerly of Fox, and Chad Bianco, the sheriff in Riverside County. Right now, Republican voters have no direction. Some like Bianco, some like Hilton, but the party or the president or someone that people pay attention to and listen to hasn't weighed in with an official endorsement. There's also the potential that other candidates could get involved. I know there's a lot of rumors that Grant Cardone, who is a rich guy friend of Donald Trump, who owns a home in Malibu and appears on the Fox Business Network all of the time, might jump into the race. Well, if his relationship with Donald Trump is smart enough, or is close enough, I guess I should say, so that Trump gets behind him and endorses him in the primary election, that could be enough to get him over the finish line. Or if he doesn't get into the race and Trump looks at Bianco and he looks at Hilton and he sees one candidate as being more viable than the other and he decides to get behind one of those two candidates, my guess is the other candidate will essentially die off. And the one candidate, the one with the endorsement, will be the candidate that gets most Republican votes. If Trump decides to do something like that, I don't think there's any room left at all for Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso will spend $1 gazillion trying to tell Republicans that he's one of them and Democrats that he's one of them, and it works if Republicans have no direction. The moment Republicans have direction, I think Rick Caruso is wasting his money going after those votes. And I think any chance that he had at being elected governor goes up in smoke. So if Rick Caruso is going to be a candidate for governor, he not only will have to try to convince California voters to put him on the November ballot, he's also going to have to convince Donald Trump to stay out of that race. All right, we've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California Hour is next. Fox 11's Alex Michelson joins us. Don't you go anywhere.